The Panthers need to reshape their image and reputation. And they should look for ways to do that are non-earth-shattering, right? Like low-key ways that they can just become a little bit better known for being good people. Because the chorus of fan despair, as I called it, I was trying to think of the best way to describe it. Okay. The chorus of fan despair is what I came up with. That is the best possible. Some of the chorus of fan despairs, like greatest hits, are, why are you complaining that they hired Dan Morgan? Because if you listen to the show, I was very confused by the hire of the assistant GM. One of the refrains that we got often was, why are you complaining that they hired Dan Morgan? You know nobody else would take that job, and they had to settle for Dan Morgan because nobody wants to be the GM for that owner. And then Dave Canales was hired, and we got the same thing. Of course they had to take a guy who's only been a coordinator for 1 year because nobody else wanted that job. Nobody wants to work for the Panthers. And then it was, why do you keep talking about those free agents? Those guys are good. No free agents will ever want to play for the Panthers. And then my favorite, this one came often. The Panthers and Tepper are the new Washington and Snyder. Those things are, and Dennis's eyebrows.
I heard that one a lot.
And he got some nodding, exactly. None of that is any good, okay? All of that is bad. And it's you know, are they exaggerations? Yes, right? I've said from the very beginning, like every head coaching job is attractive because there's only 32 of them. Same with GM jobs. But I also was saying, like, if Ben Johnson was going to take a head coaching job, it wasn't going to be with Carolina, right? So there might be a little bit of truth in each of those chorus of fan despair sayings, right? Do I think that David Tepper is as bad as Dan Snyder? I do not. I believe that Tepper desperately wants to win, which at times I wasn't sure about with Snyder. And for all of the things I've read about Tepper and all of the complaints we've heard about Tepper, there hasn't been the truly heinous allegations that were thrown out there about Snyder when it comes to workplace culture and sexual misconduct and anything like that. But still, nonetheless, you don't want to be the reputation as the team that's no fun to work for, dysfunctional, bad boss. Nobody wants to take your money. But you're always going to be the backup. You're always going to be the backup. You're always going to be the backup. How do you fix that? How do you fix a reputation as one of the worst run franchises in the league? How do you fix that when you've given them reason to believe it, right? Hiring a guy, firing him 11 games later. Right? The reports of the backstabbing happening amongst employees. Some of the reputation is earned, but how do you fix it? Well, from a broad zoom out 100 degree, it's old school, right? It's the golden rule. Right? Like you learn when you're 4 years old. Treat others how you wish to be treated. More specifically, value the players and coaches as people and do them a solid if you can. I'm not saying like, you know, at the expense of success of the team, give them, you know, whatever they want. I'm not saying every player that walks into your GM's office and says, I want to trade, you immediately say, perfect, where to? We'll sell you at a discount. I'm not saying you go that far, but Shaq Thompson, Dante Jackson, if you're going to cut them, do it now. Give them a 1 month jump on free agency. Not because you have to, not because it's going to benefit you as a team. Do it because they've been good dudes in Carolina, and you just want to do them a solid. Now, if you're sitting there screaming, oh, that's so unrealistic, other teams have done it. Other teams do it all. The Bears just did it, and let's not act like the Bears are the most functional and cool franchise in the world, but they just cut Cody Whitehair and Eddie Jackson. Two veterans that have been there a long time, Pro Bowls, like accomplished players, but their contracts were lined up as such that the Bears were able to save a bunch of cap space for next year by cutting them. So as soon as they recognized that was probably where this was going, they cut them a month before free agency began so they can go out and have their agents start shopping them ahead of the rush of free agents that are going to be able to do that in a month. The Bears could have kept him around, could have cut him later, could have waited till the new league year, could have tried to trade him, could have just held out any hope for the last second, hey, maybe we'll get a conditional 7th. But they said, no, these guys are good dudes. Let's give them a solid. Let's do them a solid and cut them. The Panthers need to find every which way for an agent to go, thanks. They need to find every which way for a veteran, well-respected player to go, hey, man, I appreciate it. Because that hasn't happened very much as of late. Now, it could be seen as something little, but the little things add up and add up and add up.
You mentioned the agent. There's going to be players that agent represents down the line that if you have good faith and hey, you know what? This is a team that we know we can easily work with. They're not hard on negotiations. They're not super strict. They're not a bunch of jerks. We can work with these guys. Okay, let's go to the table and let's see what we can work stuff out when it comes to future free agents or guys that you draft, whatever it might be. That stuff, those relationships go a long, long way.
100%. I mean, there's a lot of agents out there. Mm-hmm. There's like 5 agents that have most of the superstars. And you want to keep a good relation with all, even the smaller agents. You want to keep a good relationship with all of them. And just doing a solid here and there. Again, if you aren't sure, right? If you're like, hey, we might end up keeping Dante Jackson, then don't do it, right? If like I'm not saying to like change up any of the ways you actually think you're going to build the roster. But as soon as it's obvious, right? When you're getting together and you're putting the roster, most teams have those magnetic boards where every name is on a magnet and you can move the depth chart around. And like as soon as you look at that and every single time you look at the depth chart, you take Dante Jackson's magnet and put it off to the side and go, all right, he's not going to be here. As soon as you get there, call up his agent and say, hey, let's work on getting him to a place where he can thrive. There is something to be said for just being a good person. And if you've been a little bit more rough around the edges in the past, you're going to have to do a lot of being a good person to get everybody to go, hey, you know what? Actually, Carolina's a good place to play. Hey, you know what? Carolina's a solid place. You know, that they take care of you. That's a good reputation to have. That can help you. I'm not saying like, oh, if you're a pushover, right? Oh, if you're the most player friendly in the world, then you know you're gonna win all the Super Bowls. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying the way that the Carolina Panthers are thought of right now, the way that the Carolina Panthers reputation has been dragged through the mud so much is going to hurt. I've been on stations that cover the Washington Commanders or the Washington football team, that franchise. And they literally talk about, or used to, new ownership might be different. They used to call it a Snyder tax, right? The fan base and the analysts and everything would call it a Snyder tax. And what that meant was if somebody's open market value was like $10 million a year, in order to get them to sign with the Commanders, it was like $12.5, right? If they had an offer for $1 million or $10 million from the Broncos, and the Commanders wanted that same player, they wouldn't have to go to 11. They'd have to go to like 13 because you had to pay the Snyder tax, right? It was worth it to go somewhere else for less money to avoid playing for that franchise. You do not want to get to that point if you're the Panthers. You cannot afford to get to that point if you're the Panthers because you don't have the money to spare. You don't want to be paying a Tepper tax. Although the alliteration does make it sound better. Tepper tax, that sounds like... I forgot the Tepper tax. Here's another 20.
We might have to coin that like right now. Put it on a shirt.
It sounds like, you want to sign Mike Evans?
Tepper tax.
I mean, the Chiefs offered him, $17 million a year. You're going to have to pay the Tepper tax. You're looking at 23. Like, might be.
It might not be enough.
And the Chiefs might get a discount, right? They get the ring chaser discount.
Yeah.
Because,
he's made plenty of money in his career.
And Mike Evans has a ring also. Maybe he just wants to add to it.